All right, it's time to take notes on solving multi-step equations. So let's take a look. We have x minus 3 equals -8. So this is an equation, and we're going to talk about the different parts of this equation. All right, let's talk about some vocabulary. What is an equation? An equation is a mathematical sentence that contains an equal sign. So in this equation above, we have one side of our equation equal to the other side of our equation. Next, let's talk about variable. A variable is a symbol, usually a letter, that represents one or more numbers. So in this example above, x is our variable. It's a letter used to represent a number that we don't know. We have to solve to find what that number equals. So then we have a constant. A constant is a term that has no variable. So let's take a look above. In this example, -8 is a constant because there is no variable with -8. -3 is also a constant, again, because there's no variable attached to -3. And then we have a coefficient. A coefficient is the numerical factor when a term has a variable. So basically it is, whenever you have a variable, it's the number in front of the variable. So in this example here, x is our variable, but what number goes in front of the variable x that we just don't write in algebra? We know that there's a 1. So 1 is the coefficient to the variable x. Let's look at another example of an equation when we're talking about coefficient. In this example, 2 is the coefficient of the variable x. And again, y. Remember, y is the variable. There's no number written in front of y, but it's understood in algebra that when you have a variable by itself with no number in front, it's understood that there is a 1 in front of it. So the 1 is the coefficient to the variable y. And then 16 is just a constant. It's a number that does not have a variable attached to it. It's just a number by itself. Okay, so we've already learned and talked about order of operations to simplify expressions. Remember PEMDAS? Well, now we're going to learn and talk about the order of solving equations. So these are numerical terms that have an equal sign. So we're going to use the term, I have my cell phone here to kind of help us remember the order to solving equations. And the acronym that helps me remember the steps in the order to solve equations is don't call me after midnight. Don't call me after midnight. So the D stands for distribute. The C stands for combine like terms. The M is to move the variable. This is what we're going to learn about today. The A is you're going to either add or subtract. And then the M is to multiply or divide. So you've done all these steps before. Move the variable is going to be a little new, but we're going to talk about that and incorporate that into solving equations. So let's go ahead and take a look at some examples. All right, so the first step is to distribute. Oops, go away. All right, the first step is to distribute. So if you have parentheses, that's when you distribute. So I like to put little parentheses to remind me. We don't have any parentheses in this example, so we can skip that step. Step 2 is to combine like terms. So we have to see which terms we can combine together. So we can combine 3x and minus 4x. 3x minus 4x is negative x, or negative 1x, but we just don't write the 1 in algebra. Okay, I'm just going to bring everything else down. So I'll write my plus 6 equals 2. So we're done with this one. We've combined like terms. The next step is to move the variable. So we have a variable on one side of our equal sign, but there is no variable on the other. So we don't really need to move any variables. We're good. We want to make sure all of our variables are on one side, and they are. All right, so we cross that step off. Next is to either add or subtract. So we need to solve for x. So we need to either add or subtract. We need to get rid of this plus 6 by subtracting 6 on both sides. This is going to cancel out to 0, so we don't need to write that, but we can bring our minus x down. I'll bring my equal sign down, and then 2 minus 6 is negative 4. So we've done that step. Next is either to multiply or divide. Well, you say, wait, I don't have anything to multiply or divide. But remember, there's a coefficient in front of this x. There's a negative 1 in front of that x. So we need to get rid of that negative 1. And to do so, we are going to divide both sides by negative 1. Because negative 1x is the same as negative 1 times x. So we got to undo that multiplication. This is going to simplify to just x equals negative 4 divided by negative 1 is positive 4. So this is our answer. All right, let's take a look at number 2. The first step is to distribute. So again, if you have parentheses, you have to distribute, but there are no parentheses here, so I'm just going to cross that step out. Next is combine like terms. So are there any terms on the left side of our equal sign to combine? Nope, because this is just a constant with no variable, and this has the y, so we cannot combine those two together. And then there's nothing else on the other side to combine with 14, so we move on to the next step. Step 3 is to move the variable. So our variable is already on one side of our equal sign, so we don't really need to move it. So we can skip that step. Next is to either add or subtract. So we need to get rid of this 8, and this 8 is positive. So the opposite of positive 8 is negative 8 or minus 8. So we got to get rid of that. This cancels out to 0. I'm going to bring my negative 3y down, bring my equal sign, and then 14 minus 8 is 6. Okay, so we've added or subtracted. Next step is either to multiply or divide. So since this is multiplication, we undo multiplication by dividing. We're going to divide both sides by this negative 3 because that's the number with our variable y, and we need it to go away. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 3. This is going to simplify to just y equals 6 divided by negative 3 is negative 2. So this is our final answer. We've completed all the steps to solving this equation. All right, let's take a look at another example. And again, if I'm going too fast, feel free to hit pause to slow down and go back and rewatch it. Or if you need to take a time to write what I have on the screen, you can pause the video as well. All right, so number 3, first step is to distribute. So again, when you have parentheses, that means you need to distribute, and we do in this example. Parentheses means multiply, so you're going to multiply negative 2 times b, which is negative 2b. But you also have to multiply and say hi. -2 times -4 is +8. And then I'm just going to copy down everything else in my equation. So we've completed step 1. Step 2 is to combine like terms. Don't call me after midnight. So we only have one variable. It's on one side of the equal sign. There's nothing else to really combine it with over here. And then there's nothing to combine here, so we can skip that step. Next is to move the variable. So this is what I was saying before. Our b is already on one side of the equal sign, so we don't have to move anything. Okay, we'll cover an example where you have to move it, but we don't have to in this example. Step 4 is to either add or subtract. So we want to get b by itself, so we got to get rid of everything else first. So let's go ahead and get rid of this +8 by subtracting 8 on both sides. This 8 is going to cancel out, but we still have our -2b that's left on this side of our equal sign. I'm going to bring my equal sign down. 12 minus 8 is 4. All right, I've done that step. And then finally, we're either going to multiply or divide. -2b is the same as -2 times b. So the opposite of multiplication or times is division. And we're going to divide both sides by -2 because -2 is with our variable. Oops, that did not come out right. So this is going to simplify to b equals 4 divided by -2 is -2. So we've completed all of our steps to solving this equation. All right, and lastly, let's go over one more example. All right, step 1 is to distribute. So remember, if you have parentheses, you have to distribute and multiply. So we're going to multiply 2 times 1, which is 2. You multiply 2 times -2y is -4y. So I've gotten rid of my parentheses, and now I'm just going to copy everything else down. Okay, step 1's done. Step 2, combine like terms. So if we look on this side of our equal sign, there are no terms to combine because this is just a number, but this has a y. Same thing on the other side. We have a y, and then we just have a number, so there's nothing to combine. We can keep going in order. Step 3 is to move the variable. So if you look at it, we have a y on the left side, and we also have a y on the other side of our equal sign, but we need all of our y's together. So we're going to move it. We're going to move all of this -4y, not just the -4, but -4y. And to do that, we're going to do the opposite of minus, which is plus, or we're going to add 4y on both sides. This is going to cancel out. We are left with 2 equals, I just brought my 2 down. 2 equals 4y plus 4y is 8y. And I'm going to bring my +18 down. Next, we have to either add or subtract. So we got to get our y by itself. So that means we need to get rid of this +18 by subtracting 18 on both sides. When we do, this cancels out. 2 minus 18 is -16. And I'm going to bring my 8y down. Lastly, we either multiply or divide. Now to get y by itself, we have to divide both sides by 8 because 8's the number with our variable. So this is going to leave us with y equals -16 divided by 8 is -2. So that is how you solve multi-step equations. Make sure you have this all written down and you take a picture and submit for a grade.